Hey, today I'm canceling Taco Tuesday in the shop for Twi'lek Tuesday. We're gonna create a whole Twi'lek costume. Let's go. Hey, how's it going? Anthony Farrell here, Create Sci-Fi. Today I'm gonna make a whole Twi'lek costume, Twi'lek, Rothian, however you want to say it. And this is for my Star Wars fan film that I'm working on. You know, we got the Mandalorian costume going on. I made a Jedi. So this was so much fun to make because I love whenever I can get into leather. So obviously this I already made. We're gonna kick off the video with me showing you how I made this. This was the Lekku. Purchased this inexpensively online. Did the leather craft. Basically wanted to make it a hat, right? So to me, the key to this costume is as little skin painting as possible, right? So we have this helmet, which covers up most of the actor's face. I got a high-necked, like turtleneck kind of shirt. They'll paint their face blue, and I have some half gloves so that we only have to do the fingertips, right? So I'm gonna kick off the video with the making of the headdress, right? We're gonna do the whole costume in this video. And then also, you know, I've been shopping for a couple weeks. That's what I like to do. I got these boot options really inexpensively. These are like welding guard boots thing. So, you know, with Star Wars, we don't want laces or buckles. So this is a supporting character. So want to have a great costume, but also can't break the bank. So we have that. Purchased some half gloves on Amazon. These are actually, when season 2 episode 1 of The Mandalorian came out, one of the prop replica people was like, oh my God, it's these gloves from whatever. So I just bought them. So these will be the gloves. Bought some pants and a top online. And then I just got some interesting like textured fabric just so that it's not off the shelf, right? Excuse me. I have this sort of, I like to buy these like Euro sweatshirts. Whoa, there goes the white balance, sorry. I like to buy like these Euro type shirts. They're like Japanese, you know, you got to get them like 10 sizes too big, but they tend to be futuristic. So this we're going to alter from like a hoodie to like a collar. And then I got some like, you know, biker pants because we like the texture, but again, adding the fabric so it just doesn't look like biker pants. So we're gonna kick it off with building the headdress. Then I'll do the alterations. I'm not gonna do a tutorial on the alterations because I sew, you know, just barely. But then once I make the alterations, then the weathering and sort of the building of the costume, then we'll get into that, right? Sound good? All right, I'm excited. Let's get into it. All right, here we go. Let's get our head in the game. All right, so first thing I want to do is I want to make a head form that's the same size as the actor. The thing is, you know, I've learned over the years, a lot of these steps, like these are not 100% necessary, but it's just better when you do this stuff, right? Like anything that takes time and detracts from the actual thing that you're building, I used to avoid, but now I lean into all this sort of work because in the big picture, it makes it better and it ends up saving you time because when, you know, imagine this didn't fit properly. What a waste of time that would be, right? So I just, you know, I got this styrofoam head at like the hobby shop and I'm just massing it out, right? So that it's the same size as the actor's head. So use some dollar store duct tape, right? A little piece of wood, boom. Now I got a head form and it's the same size as the actor. So now I can really start to put this headdress together, right? So we're doing the headdress first. So use a lot of foam in costume making. Now, this is a yoga mat. Now, what I've done in the past is I've used a yoga mat for like the headband part of like any kind of leather headgear that I make, just because EVA foam is foam and absorbs, but yoga mat is sort of treated to, you know, you're going to be sweating on the yoga mat, right? So it's kind of made for that. So here I have the headband. This is going to be like the main size, right? Like the main headband. And I'm just putting some Velcro on here using the old E6000 trick that I do a lot, where the E6000 makes it a permanent bond. and clamp it on a sort of the main piece of Velcro here. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it slightly adjustable, right? So this way there's, you know, a little bit of variance in the fit. So now that I have the headband, I'm going to build the headdress, right, the headpiece around this headband. So now I'm taking aluminum foil, and I have a few plans that I downloaded off the internet. I'm not going to leave any links to those because you can find them yourself. Just, you know, Google Twi'lek, and you'll find them, just because I sort of mashed up a bunch of them, and a lot of them were derivative from other plans, and, you know, but, you know, these were helpful for me to sort of get my eye on the prize, if you will, right? It just kind of gave me confidence that I was heading in the right direction. I ended up sort of developing my own headdress as I go along here, and it's kind of like what I end up with. And I like this process because this is an organic process. I'm just kind of seeing what the form dictates to me, and it's kind of like a Spartan helmet a little bit, I guess. So, you know, I'll talk about this more later, but for me, it's more of a helmet that I'm creating here, because the male of this species has like these bulbs in the front. Like the tails don't just come from the back, they come from like the forehead. But all of the tails that I was able to find on a budget are like the female version. So what I'm trying to do is mask that by creating this sort of forehead into my headpiece that's going to look like as if it's covering up that sort of bulbous front of the male sort of head tails, if that makes sense. Woo! So, you know, here I'm making a cardboard pattern, and, you know, I'm making this from scratch, right? So there's going to be a lot of steps, and as I was saying earlier, before I would probably just start building, but now I know better. So first, you know, you make templates out of paper. So now I'm taking the yoga mat that I have left, and I usually, you know, every once in a while I'll see these at the dollar store, and, you know, I'll pick up like a half dozen of them for a couple bucks each. And what I'm doing here is I have my pattern that I created, and I'm transferring it to the yoga mat before I go into leather. Again, because I'm making this from scratch, I want to give myself every opportunity to be successful. What a novel idea. So here I'm sketching out the pattern of what I think is going to work, and by transferring it to this yoga mat material, this allows me to do, you know, like a dry run of it, right? To see like, okay, this works, this doesn't work, scratch the whole thing, or it's close, and maybe make some adjustments, right? So now I just cut this out, and again, you know, like I was saying earlier, I've found that taking these extra steps, even though this is time consuming, it always saves time in the big picture, right? So let's say I did all this without prototyping and doing templates, and then you put in all that time and effort and it just doesn't fit right. You got to go all the way back to the beginning, right? So it pays to sort of template things and take the time to sort of build it in a way that makes sense, right? So here I have my yoga pattern, and yeah, and it's taken on a life of its own, right? It's kind of like the sides are like Spartan. Now that's almost a little bit like Egyptian. And then, you know, so that's kind of cool. So I'm happy with the way that's going. So here's what I'm talking about is now once I put it together, I realize, oh, I need that like V shape to sort of give it the flair that I want, that if I just started making it out without patterning, I probably would have missed that, and that would have been the mistake, right? So here you see I'm simply just taping this back in, no big deal, because this is not my piece of leather. It's just a piece of yoga mat, right? So liking the way this is turning out. And again, I had an idea. What I like to do is I look at pictures and I had an idea of what I wanted, and what I'm making now is nothing even close to what I started out to make, and I say that in the best way because I love when that happens, right? So now it's sort of telling me what it wants to be. So now I'm confident in cutting it out in the leather. Now this is a lot of leather, and leather's not cheap, right? And then these hides, you know, to get these bigger hides, I got to go buy them. It's not something I purchase online. So I'm, measure twice, cut once, and then my knife is very sharp. I don't want to mess this up, because also, if I'm remembering correctly too, this is the last piece of leather that I have that is this size, right? So here I went at the fabric store, I think it was Joann Fabrics or Michael's or something like that, and I got these two half styrofoam spheres, and I'm going to use those to mold the bulbs in the front of the headdress. So there I just soaked it in water for too long. You only need to soak it, the veggie tan leather, in water for like 30 seconds, but because I'm going to be really molding this, I figured I let it in there longer, which just means it's going to take longer to dry. Like, it's probably going to take over 24 hours for this to dry. But again, like I said, because I'm creating this from scratch, I wanted to have that time. So there you see I'm creating those bulbs that are going to be in the forehead, right? So here I'm using some pins and just trying to figure out a way to get this leather to lay down so that it'll conform to the shape that I want there. And what I end up doing is just going with weight. So I put that weight on there, left that overnight, and once that dries, the leather is pretty cool. So once that dries and hardens, now I have this shape, right? So this is gonna, like I said, this is the third time, it's going to mask and sort of give the illusion of having those two front bulbs of the tentacles of the forehead, right? So here I'm just adding some leather with E6000 so that I can join the back pieces together. So this is just sort of like a tab that's going to keep everything lined up. And so there I have it clamped, and then here I'm just going to use some magnets to get to this middle part that I really can't reach. These rare earth magnets really have a strong clamping force, and I use them a lot, especially when it's like a weird spot that's like hard to get. And you're going to see in the front there, I have that divot, right? And then that, I wanted to glue that in place, and the magnet really helped me out there. So the magnets keeping everything together. Now I'm just going to put this aside and let it dry. This is probably a full day later, because like it probably could have got away with a shorter dry time, but like I said, I really oversaturated that leather. So yeah, so now I'm taking it apart and we're onto something. So there's that headband that we created right in the beginning, and this is going to mount around that. And so when the actor wears this, it's going to give them something to sweat into, because they are going to sweat in this. So here's the head tails, right? The Lekku. And I'll put a link below to these. I just found these online. These are inexpensive ones. As you can see there, you can see the seam. They don't fit right, but I got these on a budget. So you can spend a couple $100s on Etsy, or these ones I think were like $30 or $40. And, they don't fit my actor's head. So again, this is why I made this head form. So now I know that I'm going to have to figure something out. Now you see the way that those go right to the top of the head, right? Those are female, right? The male ones are the bulb in the front, which we just created in this headdress. So now I'm just detailing the leather, right? There's a lot of really cool like leather working tools. Like this tool here, I don't know, it's like a $10 tool. And, it's paid for itself, 100 times over. What it does is it just makes this seam, and I think the real intention of that tool is to create that groove if you wanted to sew, and it makes that's where you sew into. But this just gives it sort of like a nice finished detail. And then this sort of chamfers the edge of the leather, these two tools. And again, these tools are probably like $10 each. And then now I'm just adding details to this, right? So I have my base form. Now I'm just taking these are leftover straps from when I made the Jedi belt, actually. So just detailing these, and these are just gonna add like a little bit of visual interest to the helmet, just give it some texture, some layers, right? So I'm just gonna like wrap these around the side. And then I have these diamonds that I just cut out, which are just squares, and I'm going to put those sort of on the nub, and then it just gives it a little detail, right? I mean, if this character has this, leather headdress that they wear all the time, it's going to be nice. It's not, this is not like a baseball cap, right? This is more like a like a fedora, right? So here I'm just using the E6000, and you know, not only does this add a little bit of interest, but it also adds structural support, right? And then there, you know, I just have it with the painter's tape, let that dry again overnight. The E6000 takes 24 hours. So, you know, I keep saying that a lot in this video, overnight, right? So that means that in this short little video, I'm probably on day 4 or day 5. And what I found is that if you don't give it that dry time, it just screws everything up. Things start to come apart when you get ahead of yourself. So yeah, I'm glad I took the time. That looks good. So now I'm going to dye it with some brown leather dye. And thing is with this is I always just rub it on, and the coverage is not great, but that works to my favor, right? Because I'm trying to create a piece that has some life to it, right? If you were trying to make something that was brand new, then you have to be a little bit pay attention more when you're applying the dye. But here I'm just, you know, I have like a old rag and I'm just covering it, heavier in some places than others. And then you see there, because I glued on some of these leather pieces, you know, some of that glue seeped out and then the dye doesn't take it, but that, you know, just adds to the character. And then there it is, right? It's drying. So what I did now, this happened off camera. I'm not sure. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened to the footage, but I basically just glued in that headdress piece, right? So that it's all coming together now. So now what I'm going to do, this is similar with The Mandalorian, how I cleaned up the inside, and this is just more an aesthetic thing for the person who's wearing it, right? So I'm going to start to tidy up the inside. So now I got to figure out how to attach these head tails. Now, like I said, because these are inexpensive head tails, I don't want to commit to them 100% and glue them in there. I want them to be removable. One, so that I could do some work to them, or if like one day decide to upgrade, like the headdress, that leather headdress, it's not going to get better than that. That thing is like amazing. But someday I might want to get a better set of head tails. So I use some Velcro. And then here I just have a piece of 2mm craft foam that I'm covering up that split that I had to make in order to get those head tails to fit the actor's head. Now, because it's going to have that spot there, what I'm doing is I'm adding this piece of leather trim that's going to sort of flap over the top, almost as if it's like protects the head from the sun or something. And again, this was just a practical thing to cover up that seam, but then it ends up adding like a nice element to the headdress. So I was happy with that. So here I got the 2mm foam sheets, and I'm just cleaning up the inside. Again, I was starting to talk about this earlier. This is like for The Mandalorian. This is for the actor, right? It's just cleaning it up. It's tidying it up. We're making this a finished piece, right? It's the difference between a storefront where it's leaned up, you know, with a 2x4 and there's nothing behind it, or if it's an actual building, right? So we're building actual buildings. I don't know if that made sense to you. Makes sense to me, right? So here I'm just using some barge cement. Love that stuff. Just put some on both sides, let it dry, and once it flashes off, then it gets pretty sticky, and then that's like a permanent bond. So with foam, you always want a sharp knife. So now I've just sharpened up my knife, and now I'm just cleaning up the edges. We'll hit that with some heat in a little bit, but there we're just cleaning that up. So now the mink oil, I talk about this a lot, you know, when we build props, how we do sort of the clear coat, and the mink oil is kind of that, right? The putting on the mink oil, it's gonna make the leather, it's dry now, right, after we dyed it, and it's gonna make the leather just have a little bit more character. And the same thing with the mink oil, you know, I put it on heavy, thick, light, rub it off, and that just gives it a little bit of life, a little bit of reflection. You see there, it's on that head leather piece, and it gives that a sort of a new life, right? So now, this is just some stuff I read online. They said to put some rice in the tips, and then I have this shredded memory foam to fill them with, and I'm just doing that. And this was funny because, you know, I just put like a couple seconds of this up for you because it's pretty straightforward, but my shop was covered with those foam pieces. So there you go. And then off camera, I make a little piece of leather to cover that seam. It's almost like a scrunchie, like a ponytail holder. You see it there, right? And I thought that worked fine. So there it is. That's the final thing. So now that was the hardest part, right? So we got the head settled. Real happy with the way that turned out. And like I said, it was worth it to build that head form because now I know it's going to fit. So now on to the costumes, right? So I showed this in the beginning. So these, you know, because this is a supporting character, I didn't have as much of a budget. So these are meant to be for welders, right? So apparently, you know, you just put these on over your pants and your boots and when you're welding so you don't burn yourself up. But I thought, oh, this is perfect because Star Wars, you really want to stay away from laces and buckles. And they're just kind of this crazy orange color. But I was already in dye mode. And again, you know, the dye doesn't cover this very well, but man, I love it. It just gives it a really nice character. You see there, it's like, it just looks really dirty, really lived in. And then now, you know, I put that out and back, let that dry, move on to the next piece. So now here's this sort of, it was a woman's cardigan that I found in the thrift store. And I just, you know, I cut off the sleeves, tidied that up. And then here is that hoodie, that like Euro hoodie. I cut off the hood, sewed it into a collar, and then cut off, you know, the pouch in the front of a hoodie, right? And then these I got just from Amazon. Those are the ones they used in The Mandalorian. And then here's like those bike stretcher pants because, you know, we got that texture on there. And then I sewed all these little bits and bobs on there. And again, I don't show sewing on this channel because if you went out today and bought a sewing machine and started sewing tonight, you'd be at the same level of sewing as me. So I can't really add anything. I can't help you with sewing. If anything, I use it a lot and hopefully I can inspire you to try it, right? But I have no right to show you sewing, right? So here's a couple quick fixes here. These gloves have the logo on there. So here I just cut out some scrap leather, glued it on there. That was an easy fix, did that first. Here, you know, the sleeves have this texture, and this is something I do a lot in costume building, right? So I want to just call out this shoulder, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it with a metallic paint, right? So again, you know, broken record, but when I do these costumes, it's not a cosplay, right? It's not, you know, I'm not going to be putting this in a costume contest or being on a Comic-Con floor for, you know, 8 hours. It's to be in a movie for probably a total of 2 minutes on screen, right? So low cost, high impact. So I use a lot of paint in the costume building for my films. So that just added a metallic copper to that sleeve. It called out that area and, you know, it just adds a little something. Here I'm masking off the sort of, this is the signature part of bike pants, right? That sort of quilted look. So I'm just masking this off. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit this with some gold paint, right? Just so that it pops and, you know, looks a little different than something that's just like a fabric part of the paint. So I'm doing a base. This is gold spray paint that I like to use on fabrics and leather. This is spray paint that's for floral arrangements, right? So it's a finer mist, and I find that it works good in this kind of application. Here I have the hair dryer. Just, you know, I say this all the time too, just want to keep that party rolling. So when I pull out the hair dryer, that means I'm like, okay, this has been 5 days, let's go. So here I'm just doing a brush now of gold onto here. And again, because it's Star Wars, because everything's beat up, you know, this would not be ideal if you wanted like a pristine, beautiful costume. Because by the time I weather this and wash it, this is going to be all chewed up and chunky, but that's, I'm good with that, right? So there, yeah, that looks good, right? We got all those textures. I got that dot fabric and got this. So now, right, I covered up the zippers. And here, while that's drying, I'm just going to take my mink oil and bring it onto these boot toppers. These, I guess they're spats technically. And again, it just gives it like a lot of character, right? And off camera, I take that white Velcro and I just hit it with some acrylic paint so that blends a little better. But look, you know, look, they're just greasy and dirty, and see how the light catches them differently. Really happy with that. So here on these pants, what I did is I sewed in 2 patches underneath of like this light blue fabric that matches the skin color of the character, because it's no budget. You know, I'm going to be in a hurry shooting this in one day, and the guy gets shot twice, once in each leg. So what I'm going to do is I have the Velcro, and the Velcro is patches of that same fabric, and it'll start off covered. Then when he gets shot the first time, rip it off, and you'll see a little sneak of that blue. And then when he gets shot the second time, pull off the second one, and then you see it again. Otherwise, I'd have to have 3 pair of pants. Don't have the budget, the time for that. And here I'm just covering it with packing tape because I'm going to dye everything. And also I'm burning this because it's a blaster burn, right? So I have the fan going, and I have a mask on. And, you know, just be careful when you do this sort of thing. So what I'm doing here is just giving the edges a little burn because it's going to be blasted. And, you know, if you watch Star Wars, there's not a lot of gore in Star Wars. It's like, you know, you get shot with a laser, but it's just going to be a little scoring and, like, you know, probably add like a smoke effect of like smoke rising off of the hit. And then there, that's the blue tape. And again, I just put the tape down because I'm going to be dyeing these pants as well. So I don't want to change the blue, the color of the dye, which ends up happening anyway. And off camera, I have to fix that. So here I'm just taking some really heavy grit sandpaper, and I'm just toothing up these pants, right? I wanted to sort of, you know, the knees would be lived in. Maybe one side gets dragged. Now, I don't weather clothing as heavily as I weather the props, but you want to give it a hit. Nothing worse than when you see some film, and if it's like fantasy or sci-fi, and it just looks like whoever made the film ordered the stuff online, opened up the Amazon boxes, put them on the character, and, you know, said action. Like, it just bugs me. So here, you know, I'm just doing a little bit of the file treatment, just scuffing these up. These are like rubber, that top part, it's not plastic, so it was hard to scuff up, but, you know, just giving it a little something. And again, with this stuff, it's better to just be haphazard. And then off camera, it was just that chunk of copper, and I just went through and checkered in a lighter copper, and I'm just showing you that there. And a lot of stuff like this in the home stretch will happen off camera because I'll be going to bed, I'll look at it, and I'll go, oh no, it needs something, and then I'll have OCD and I can't do it then. I just do it right then. And then here, I'm just tearing this up. Now this, you know, you have to be careful because this was a really cheap top, right? So this is not real cotton. I don't even know what this is. So yeah, you see there, like, it's like some kind of nylon or something. So here, I'm just being very careful, but, you know, scratching it up, giving it a little bit of life. And it's good, like, when it catches like that, and it sort of gets knotted, yeah, that feels good. Just doing a couple little scrapes, and then, yeah, see, there, like, just that little bit, just that little bit. Of course, on the bottom, just anywhere, you know, look at any old clothes you have, you know. And then now we're going to weather the clothing, very similar to the way we do the props, just an acrylic wash. And again, you know, this always looks heavy-handed. If I was doing a cosplay, I wouldn't do this step, right? So what this is when I do filmmaking, I always do these heavy treatments because by the time I do like a color grade and, you know, using the different lenses when I'm filming, you know, a short film or a series or a feature, all this stuff just sort of adds to the story, right? It blends it all together. So here, these are brand spanking new, like out of the package. So these I spend a little more time on. And this is more experimental too. Like these, I'm like, okay, put that on there. And then you look at it and you're like, nope, not enough. Then I thought, well, you know, I'm trying to remember what I was thinking here. And then I was like, bloody hand. I always do the bloody hand, and then it's hands. And then I was just going for it. So I took the copper paint and I just put it in my hand. Didn't even use a brush. I was like, all right, let's just, you know, I'm in the zone. And then that ended up looking pretty cool. And it's better that I did it that way. Because like I said, that's like rubber. It's not plastic. So I kind of just had to literally massage that in there. And then, happy with those. And everything's going to go in the dye soup later. You'll see in a minute. So here, I just want these shirts to be filthy. I want that pattern to pop. So I'm doing a pretty heavy dry brush. Here's, a lot of time with shirts, it's like sweat stains, like necks and armpits. Like I was watching The Mandalorian when they did in season 1 when they did the heist, and under the guy's shirt it was pretty heavily stained. And what's interesting is you look at that and you're like, oh, okay, it gives me the confidence to go heavier. But as you're doing it, you can't believe that it's that heavy, but it actually is. But you're not looking for it, right? So that's got some life now. That character's been around. And here again, this is just this was probably some woman's sweater that they wore to work, so now we're just I do this sometimes too. I'm cleaning up my workbench top with that because I don't know, why not? So here, this is something, again, I know I just said this, but it's repeating. What I do here is I do flecks of paint on film costumes. I just want to break up the surface of the color surface of the costume, right? I want it to look more organic. And what I do is I just take a wet paintbrush and I just splatter just little dots. And what's going to happen is, like, it looks like a little bit much, but I'm really only lightly hitting it. And then once that all dries, you get like a little speckle look to it. And it's one of those things that I just always do. I don't know the science behind it. I'm sure there's some sort of like reason why that it just, especially like I picked that up and doing it in theater, right? So it just sort of blends everything together. It softens it, I guess is the way to do it. And then there it is in my backyard drying. And then here I have the dye. So what I do, I've done this before. So I have this costume made up of like 5 different pieces, right? So this is a poly dye, so it'll work on cotton and polyester, and it's a brown. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put everything in that brown. And what ends up happening is it tones down all that weathering I did. And also, because the base pieces are different colors, they're gonna take the dye differently as well, right? So even though I'm dyeing it all brown, it's not gonna be all like, monotone one color, but it somehow is gonna give it all subconsciously like a hue in like the same family. And those gloves like really became something different when they came out of there, right? As you'll see. So there's everything, making a Twi'lek stew. Stirring that up. And, I usually just let this sit overnight. And again, most of this is going to go away. Cover it up. And then, so let's see. It's like the boots. Look at those. Those look amazing. That was like the happy accident. Those gloves, boom, part of the same worlds, that character. Those pants, you can see there with now the brown. That looks better than the light brown. And then that shirt, even though it's the same color, it has a little hue. That's the pants. Then there's the headdress again. Really happy with this. Now we're really lucky. The actor CLINT, he's a very talented guy. He's got a band. He's a filmmaker. He's going to be playing this character. So he's modeling. This is something that we do with films is he's trying it on. We're going to have to make some adjustments. But here he's doing the first fitting. And for first fitting, looks pretty good. Really happy. And I'm excited for you to see his performance. He's doing a really good job on this.
Mando bounty hunter. Never would have guessed.
Yeah. Oh man, that just came out so good, right? And these boots could not be more happy. Like, wow, look at those. And I think it's worth noting that, I keep saying I'm working on a Star Wars fan film, right? And the thing is, like, this I was doing in between that. This was kind of like an afterthought. And I could not be more pleased with the way this costume came out. I mean, everything really just came out great, right? And there's something to be said for that, where I had a clear idea of what I was going to do, just executed it, but I didn't overthink it because I was working on the Mandalorian armor. And this came out better than I would have imagined it, right? So kind of amazing, something to keep in mind too. Like, you can't overthink things, but, diligently proceed forward, but, just set your goals and go for it, And then, just on a practical level, really happy with this too, because this character, kind of, a filmic trope, a dramatic device. He runs, he gets shot in the leg, it slows him down, there's a confrontation, he gets shot again. And how do you do that on a budget when you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of money? So what happens is, that comes off, there's the first hit, right? Because this character is blue. Then blah, 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 that comes off, there's the second hit. And again, it's never gonna be in the camera like that. It's gonna be like, he's gonna be all hunched over. This will be weathered a little bit more. So happy with that. And it's, Star Wars, so just textures, right? Textures, dirt, grime, no zippers. And then, these are the gloves from Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, that the Marshal wears. So that's a pretty cool little thing. And, little things like, modifying this shirt, but it was a sweatshirt turning into a shirt, but then just adding this texture element, just something that I picked up for a couple dollars at the thrift store, right? Makes a huge difference. Same thing with this. Like if this was cosplay, I don't know if I would have just painted this, but this is film on set for one day. It's going to be anamorphic lens, heavy color correction stuff. That's just going to pop nicely. Maybe not on a convention floor, might be like, but that's not what we're doing, right? These are film costumes. But anyway, again, I was so focused on the Mandalorian costume that this one came out really good. And I was really happy to share this with you. And it's hopefully, it kind of, when I show a complete piece like this, it lets you know that, it's doable, right? You just got to get in there and get at it. Oh, I'm excited. We're going to start shooting this thing pretty soon. Just got to find the location, probably after the holidays. Well, as always, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I love to read the comments. And check out the merch shop. We got the hats. We got t-shirts. Have hats and t-shirts for all the films and series on this channel. And, just buying that really helps out, so check it out if you can. And remember, I'm just here to help make sci-fi.